Hi, I'm Hannah. This is Pyles of Books, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I plan to read for the Literary Life Books of Centuries Reading Challenge. Okay, so just to give a little bit of context, the Literary Life is a podcast that is put out by Angelina Stanford and her husband Thomas Banks from the House of Humane Letters, and then their friend Cindy Rollins. I listen to their podcast some. I just am not really in the season of life for podcast listening, it seems like, but I do follow their Facebook group, and I have learned so much and have really enjoyed my time in their group, so I definitely recommend them. I am going to try to listen to their podcast more this year just because the information is so valuable, and I really like the way that they read books and they teach you to read books, and it's very valuable in my opinion. So they have a reading challenge every year. I participated in it last year, but I didn't finish it, and that was okay. I was just grateful for the books that I did read that really stretched me. But this year I wanted to be more intentional about it, so I just printed off the graphic that they had made. They have one for where you can fill in your own, and then they have this one with some recommendations. So I will just read to you the different categories really quick. The first four you only need one book for. So there's mythology, the ancients, biblical times, and the early Middle Ages. And then the rest are all 2 books for each category. So the 14th century, 15th century, 16th century, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries. So as just a little bit of a bonus for me, I am trying to read only books that I own. There are a couple that I will have to get from the library unless I can find something before I get there that I do have on my shelves that I was not aware of, or I will borrow from a friend or from the library or something. And I want to try to read them in order. So instead of skipping around, I read the mythology book first. I'm already done with that one, and I'm currently reading my choice for the ancients. So we'll go ahead and get into it. I don't know a lot about most of these books. I was a big reader growing up, but I didn't really read a lot of classics. So these are just books that I have, gathered from different lists or homeschool curriculums or what have you. Things that I'm sure are probably good for me to read, but I don't actually know very much about them. So let's get into it. Okay, so like I said, the first one, I've already read it, and my son is reading it now, and he's upstairs. It's nap time at my house, and I forgot to have him bring it down before he laid down. So it's Greek Myths by Olivia Coolidge. I had a number of options that I could have chosen from, but that seemed like the most attainable for me. So I read that one. I enjoyed it. I'm not against reading mythology by any means, but it's not something that I necessarily enjoy either. So the book was fine. I thought it was a good one for kids, but it wasn't like my favorite book or anything. And then the book that I have next is, let me grab it, I should put these in order, is The Children's Homer by Patrick Collum. I have read a part of this several years ago, or maybe I read the whole thing, I'm not sure. But it's just the children's, obviously, version of Homer. The Adventures of Odysseus and the Tale of Troy. So I started this last night. It won't take me too long to get through, and I am enjoying that one so far. So I don't know, if maybe I get done with this, I might be brave enough to try the real thing. We'll see. So then the next one is Biblical Times, and I'm going to read the Apocrypha, or parts of it, probably just a couple of books from it. I know that this is controversial, and that's fine. This was something that they recommended that I had on my shelves. I'd picked this up at the thrift store last, I don't know, maybe a year ago or something. So the other option is Josephus, who wrote during the Biblical Times, and I know I have a book by him as well, but I couldn't find it. So I might switch this out by the time I get there, but I am kind of interested and curious to read this one. Okay, and then the last one for only one book is Ivanhoe for the Early Middle Ages. So last year I read The Lady of the Lake by Sir Walter Scott and loved it. It was one of my favorite books that I'm going to be sharing about. I really loved it so much. So I know that Ivanhoe is not... The Lady of the Lake was an epic poem. It was a big, huge, long story poem, and it was beautiful. I know Ivanhoe is not that way, but I am looking forward to getting to this one finally. It's been on my radar for a while. Okay, next, so for the 14th century, I need 2 books. Whoops. And the first one I'm going to do is the Canterbury Tales. And I think the font is pretty big, so I don't really know much about this one either, but I guess we'll see how I like it when I get there. And then, the other one is Dante's Divine Comedy, which I talked about in my last video. I've already started it, so this is a bit of a cheat. I started this on December 22nd, so to make myself feel better about it, I'm just telling myself that I want to read this, I want to finish this challenge before December 22nd of 2024, so I'm going to try for that really hard, and it really doesn't matter if I don't. It's just, I guess, yeah, it made me feel a little bit better about having already started one. Okay, now for the 15th century, I only could find one book. It was one that they recommended, and I knew I had it on my shelf, so I'll either keep looking and try to find something else to fill this category, or I'll have to get something from the library. It's The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. So I, again, don't know anything about this book, but like I said, it's one that they recommended. And then, okay, so for the 16th century, I've got Utopia by Thomas More. This is a classic that I picked up at the thrift store. And again, I don't know much about it, but it's shorter than I had thought it would be. So I don't know. That's what I'm planning to read for that. And for my other one, I have 2 options. I can't decide. I'm either going to read the play Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare, or I'm going to read this biography of William Shakespeare that I just picked up at the thrift store last week. So my husband and I just watched a movie adaptation of Much Ado About Nothing, and it was hilarious. So I was just already looking forward to reading that play sometime this year. So I thought that originally I would do that, but then I found this this biography, so I may switch it out and do this one instead. Alright, then for the 17th century, I'm going to do The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas. I read The Count of Monte Cristo by Dumas last year and enjoyed that one quite a bit. I did accidentally read an abridged version, but it was fine. It took me long enough. So I am looking forward to it. The little bit of the story that I know of The Three Musketeers, I think it's gonna be something that I enjoy, although it is a much larger book than I was anticipating when I grabbed this copy. Then the other one I have for the 17th century is The Pilgrim's Progress. I have 2 copies of it, and I cannot find either one. So I'm sure they're here somewhere on my messy shelves, or they're at the other house. I know I have them, but I'll have to find them before I get there, which shouldn't be too hard. Okay. So then for the 18th century, I needed 2 books, and I picked up The Vicar of Wakefield. This is something, again, that I just had on my shelves. They recommended it, and so I was like, oh yeah, I have that one. So I know nothing about this. This is on a curriculum list, though, that I really trust their books, so I'm going to do that one. And then The Clapham Sect, How Wilberforce's Circle Transformed Britain by Stephen Tompkins. My husband and I really enjoy reading about William Wilberforce and his friends, so I bought him this book, I don't know, a year and a half ago maybe or something. I bought several about different people in this, in William Wilberforce's circle, and we've read those, but we haven't read this one yet, so we might read it together, or I might read it on my own, but I'm looking forward to getting to this one. This one, it will be tempting to read, or it will be tempting for me to get to this one before I get there in the timeline, but I'm gonna try to stick to that. Okay, so that's the 18th century. Then for the 19th century, I have Sherlock Holmes and Jane Austen. So those are two authors that I would like to read to zero this year. That was just kind of a goal that I had made for myself. So I probably will be working on these Sherlock Holmes and Jane Austen up until then, but I'll just fill in the sheet with whatever I am reading at the time, probably. And my Jane Austen book is upstairs. I do have some copies of the individual books, but I have one that has all 7 of her novels in it together, and I am reading that one right now, and it's upstairs in my room. So okay, then for the 20th century, I'm going to do a Northrop Frye. I am not familiar with Northrop Frye at all. This is an author that is recommended constantly by the Literary Life podcast, and I saw this at a used bookstore a number of months ago, so I picked this one up, The Great Code, the Bible and Literature. So I'm excited to read this. Like I said, I'm not familiar with him at all, but the things that they say about him are very intriguing. So I'm looking forward to doing this one, and then the other one I will get here really quick. Okay, well, never mind. I can't find it. My plan was already to read an E.M. Forster book. I own 3. Howard's End, is it A Room with a View? And then a nonfiction work. And they are covering one of the fictional works on the podcast, and I can't remember which one it was, but and I believe that's in March. So they will take a book and they'll cover it with the podcast. So they'll read through the book, and then each week's podcast episode will be maybe like chapters 1 through 4 or something, and they'll just go over the book. So that one is going to be read before I get to it on the timeline, but that's fine. I'm looking forward to reading that one. I'm so annoyed that I can't remember which one it is, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so then for the 21st century, I needed 2 books, and I'm reading a number of modern books, so this won't be too difficult for me. I'll just fill it in with whatever. Although I do plan to read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I was a teenager when The Hunger Games came out and was popular. I was one of those teenagers who didn't want to read the books because they were popular. So I waited until all 3 books were out. The first movie was out, or even the second movie maybe. And then I read them, fell in love with them. I loved them. I've only watched the first movie and I did not like it. So I haven't watched the others. So then I was one of those adults when the 4th one was released, just a handful of years ago, was like, oh, what? There's more to the story? So anyway, I grabbed this at the thrift store. I don't know. I think it was this past summer. I was at the thrift store and I found it. So I own all 4 books now, and I do plan to read through the whole series, read the other 3 before I read this one, just to kind of refresh me, because it's been, I don't know, 12, 13 years. Yeah, 12 years probably since I've read them. So anyway, that's just kind of a funny little bit about me, but I am so excited to read this. I don't know if I can wait until, the very end of the challenge to do that one. So that's it. That's all of them. That is what I plan to read, except for I still need one for the 15th century. So they do give some recommendations, and I don't, as far as I know, I don't own any of those. I could own some in this Harvard Classics set, so I will look through there, but from off the top of my head, I don't think I own any of these. They'll recommend reading, or one of the ideas that they gave was a book on the War of the Roses. And I read a nonfiction work on the War of the Roses um, a few years ago. Well, it's been longer than that. My oldest was a baby, so 7 or 8 years ago. Um, and I loved it. It was very good. So I think I can remember what the cover of the book was. I cannot remember the title or the author at all, but I think I might try to find out because I would like to reread that. So if you have any recommendations for me to fill in that last one, let me know. And if there are any of these that you maybe don't think are worth reading, or some that you would sub them out for, I would also love to hear that, because it's not necessarily set in stone. I like to make a plan just so that I can see it and like know, okay, this is what I'm working towards, but I'm also one to definitely change the plan, especially when it comes to reading. So I'd love to hear your recommendations, and I'd love it if you stick around, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.